there, thank you for joining me for That's the Way It Is. I'm your host, BC. I'm going to tell you a little story about Dr. Trent. He was over in Texas, and he had met up with an old high school friend who became an oil tycoon, and they ran into each other, so, he invited them over for supper. So Mr. Trent went there, and, they had a really nice supper, dinner, whatever you want to call it, and he said, let me take you up to the balcony. So they go out, and they, they're able to look around, and he says, he looks to the east, he says, all this is my land as far as I can see. And you see all the oil wells and things like that out there. He looks to the west. He says, and you see cattle, things of that nature, like you would expect to see in Texas. And he says, all that is mine as far as I can see. Look to the left. See this are open land. He said, all that is mine as far as the eye can see. Looks to the south. He says, and you see wooded area, and he said, all that is mine as far as the eye can see. And he said, I worked hard for 25 years to get all this. And the guy stops, and he waits, expecting Dr. Trent to, give him some admiration, tell him, kudos to you, something like that. But that isn't what Dr. Trent does. Dr. Trent looks up, and the guy's looking up, and the man says, all that is God's as far as the eye can see. And see, and that's what you got to remember. You can own as much property as you want, and you can think that all this is fine and dandy. But you know what? We come from the earth, and we're going to go back to the earth until the Lord calls us. All this, as much as you want to believe is yours, it isn't yours. It basically is being loaned to us by God, and He's expecting us to do what's right by what is His. There's a story in the Bible where this man, he gives each one of his slaves coins, and to see what they do. He gave 1 3, 1 2, 1 1. The guy with 1, he went out and he buried it. And when the master came back, the other 2 guys had invested it, and they like doubled what they had invested. But the guy who went out and buried it, he didn't make anything. He had exactly what he had. And he said, Master, I knew you was a cruel man. And that's something really you shouldn't tell somebody, but he did. And you see what happened to him. You can look in that story in the Bible. And God expects the same out of us. He's not a cruel master or, a cruel God. But He does expect us to take care of what is His. And, and one way to take care of what is His and invested in it is by, helping others. There's charities out there. There's people who are just, in the street. I had a friend who, seen this guy that was on the side of the road, and nobody even helped him. He said he may have been in his 80s, and nobody stopped to help him, but he stopped and found out that the guy's nephew lived a couple houses down, so he helped him there. And I gotta give you kudos, Chad, that was for you. And that's what we're talking about. We're here to help each other, but yet the world has turned so selfish that nobody's doing that. They don't want to believe in God. Even scientists is saying that that space had a beginning, and they're trying to figure it out. Well, you know what? If you look in Genesis, the answer's right there. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and He seen that it was good. People forget that no matter how much science you use, science is nothing but a study of God's work, of God's great work. Everybody talks about the great masterpieces, that hangs up on the wall, but everybody forgets about the greatest of all. and that's life, and that is, everything that God has surrounded us with. Some of the great minds in history knew this, and they understood this, but it seems like the more technology we get, the dumber we get as far as it comes to God. And that's just ridiculous. There's not even a word to describe how dumb that is. But I would like to thank you for joining me. I'm gonna leave it right there and give y'all something to think about. But I'd like to thank you for joining me. You have a wonderful day.